Vanguard!
Shadow Paladin tends to gain power by sacrificing their own comrades. Everything goes as long as you are victorious. That was the only truth when they were led by Phantom Blaster Dragon. But with the new Vanguard letting their main forces, Shadow slowly turns to a more civilized form of combat and gains strength by combining forces. This is somewhat familiar to a different band of warriors, but is this actual reality or just a phantom mirage? You can't be sure when facing Illusionary Avenger Mordred Phantom. Mordred Phantom is the brand new VR for Shadow Paladin, a very Shadow-unlike card as this one empowers your other Shadow Paladin units, Blaster Dark to be precise. It allows Shadows to swing in hard without much effort with even lingering effects. Mordred Phantom's first ability gives your Blaster Dark an unplaced effect because every time you place one on the field, you gain an extra force marker. This means you can spam multiple markers in a turn, and this is where Shadow's ruthless nature comes to light. Because if you want more power, you can call multiple Blaster Darks on top of each other to activate the ability an extra couple of times. Generating force markers instead of gaining passive power like Ganslot does is a lot better as the power gain will stack over time, and even if the unit is gone, the power will linger on the field, meaning other units can benefit from this as well. Mordred Phantom's second ability allows you to restand all your Blaster Darks and give them an extra 10k power. This allows you to not only multi-attack in force, but you immediately get to reuse and benefit from generating all those extra force markers. Gaining the extra 10k also means that you can negate any defensive trigger they might have gotten during that turn. Just like Ganslot, this skill is restricted behind the condition that your opponent is also sitting on a grade 3, meaning you can't rush them in the early game. But that's no problem as you can still make extra force markers and pressure them through that. Just like the Ganslot build, this deck has a clearing weakness, and that is once again it relies on a single unit, Blaster Dark. But where Royal Paladin has a lot of consistency boosters, Shadow takes a different approach. They go all in terms of power output. When they go off like a bomb. But if they not, they flop hard. However, that doesn't mean they have no consistency cards. Shadow's got a vital card that is important for the deck, and that is Nullity Revenger Masquerade. This card allows you to potentially fetch you a Blaster Dark or a Mordred Phantom. Both are vital pieces to make the deck work. Sadly, the top 7 can lead to whiffing, but it at least is a free search. If you are successful, you can sack one of your domains and you made a pretty good deal. And in the scenario where you wrote it on the Vanguard circle with an empty field, you can potentially get a free plus out of it. But Masquerade also comes in pairs, and the other one is Transient Revenger Masquerade. And once again, it's an engine piece that is also a consistency booster to the deck. It works similar to Monarch Sanctuary that you can fetch Blaster Dark from the drop, but the fact that you need to put it in Soul is actually a plus on the card, as Soul is always tight for Shadow Paladin. But the fact that this card allows you to recall Blaster Dark from the drop makes it possible to aggressively chain multiple Blaster Darks onto the field. And while you do this, you also generate more force markers. So funny enough, this card works very similar to the new Genesis support we're going to get in a couple of months. With the aggressive nature established, we can look at the card that can synergize with the fact that we're going to call it on top of Blaster Dark multiple times. A great support card for that is Cursed Lancer. This card can only be called on top of a unit, but if you do, you can Soul Blast to countercharge 1. This works perfectly with Transient Revenger Masquerade, as he counterblasts and goes into the soul to call a Blaster Dark. Cursed Lancer calls on top of the Blaster Dark to Soul Blast the Transient Revenger and countercharge 1. Do this as much as you want to set up a kill turn with Mordred Phantom or the following card. With all the extra force markers and power on the field, we could use an extra finisher that could really benefit from having all the power. That is where Danger Loon's Dragon comes into play. This unit is a great finisher as it has the same effect as Waterfall, but this time it also works to the rearguard circle. So combine it with all the extra force markers and this thing can swing for game very easily. But if that wasn't enough, his Vanguard skill allows you to get your grade 2 right back to hand, meaning if you use Blaster Dark's Twin Drive, you can get it back for a Mordred Phantom turn or you could even get 2 Surges from a single Masquerade. Besides engine pieces, we need some generic draw for the deck, and we are familiar with the Charon and Maka combo, but in this new wave we got a new duo which is similar but still different enough to give people a reason to pick one over the other. Barrier Troop Revenger Dorint allows you to have a 28k column and draw for a Counterblast and a Soul Blast if you have Frontliner Revenger on the field. So this works in reverse from the Charon and Maka combo. This is great to pressure in the early game, as this most likely result into a damage, as the only thing that can block this is a heal trigger, and not even that if you ride to grade 2 first. The combo card for this duo is Frontline Revenger Clawless. This card allows you to get another draw, and if you have a Dorint on the field, its cost will only be by shoving it in the soul, but you need to be able to pay the Counterblast to get it back. This combo allows you to draw 2 cards and make a 28k column or a 20k one with an 8k booster somewhere else for the cost of 1 Counterblast and shoving a specific unit in the soul. Sure, you need to be able to pay the 2 Counterblasts and 1 Soul Blast, but most of it you will get back. In sheer value wise, this is better than Maka and Charon, but those two can work independent from each other and they are easier to pull off or combo with in the same turn, but they only draw 1 instead of 2 cards, so keep that in mind when deciding for a duo. Besides the support card for Mordred Phantom, we have the obvious Shadow Paladin support that can be used in any list. I'm of course talking about Maka and Charon that I briefly mentioned during the last 2 cards, but we also have the main with all the other 5k power units to filter our deck to increase the consistency of said deck. Resources in Shadow Paladin is usually a pretty rough thing, but Mordred Phantom is a bit unique in this scenario, as the main engine and plays actually only cost a single Counterblast a turn, namely to restand your Blaster Darks. The issue comes when we are using all the other pieces. Transient and Cursed Lancer are great counterbalance card, and Danger Lunge is a card that probably will only be used once, so all the other resources you have will go to drawing cards. But always keep track on your Counterblast and leave enough open so you can restand your Blaster Darks. The trigger lineup for this build is mainly crits, but as we know, this deck needs its Blaster Darks and Mordred Phantom, so running some extra draws might not actually hurt you as much as you think. As you are swinging in multiple times for high numbers, having crits or not will sometimes not matter, especially if they're already at 5 damage. This deck only wants 1 marker, and that is Force 1. And that's because you're going to make a metric ton of these Force markers in a single game. And this also makes your Danger Lunge Dragon all the more dangerous, as without the power it can be blocked with a single trigger. Mordred's main strategy is very simple. You ride into Mordred, make a bunch of Force markers, and either swing with multiple attacks or swing with a high powered Danger Lunge. But even if that's the case, we can build multiple lists which suits to different playstyles. Let's first take a look at how we can build it straight out of the box. This list uses the main support card that we talked about, both Masquerades for consistency, we have Dorint and Clawless as a draw engine, and we have Danger Lunge as an extra potential finisher or first ride target. The only new phases we have is Demonic World Castle and No Fort. This card allows us to make a late game finisher all the more devastating. It can give your Blasted Dark a 28k power increase, meaning guarding most likely will force a PG from your opponent. But this card works even better with Danger Lunge. This power with the boost with all the extra force markers is pretty scary. But that coupled with the PG guard restriction makes it a devastating combo. However, keep in mind the card only works when your opponent is at 5 damage, so most of the game it's a vanilla card. But once it activates, it will put in the work that you need. Now obviously this list is far from ideal, but it gives us a good base to make a more consistent build. So let's see how this can look like if we add the old support in the mix. Then you can have a build that looks somewhat like this. This list is the main Mordred support with the inclusion of Darkness Maiden Maka and Black Sage Charon duo. Maka allows us to have a bit more consistent draw engine, as she on her own will always draw you a card. She doesn't need to be paired off with another card. But if you pair it off with Charon, you can use his ability to refund the Counterblast for a Soul Blast, and also get a nice beefy unit onto the board. But if you want, you can replace these duos with the new Dorint and Clawless. Maka and Charon aren't the only new faces in this list, as we also have Skull Witch in the main and Blackwing Swordbreaker. The main is another consistency tool, as she allows you to fin the deck right from turn 1 for no cost, meaning you can increase the chance of drawing your important pieces like Blasted Dark, Mordred Phantom and even the Masquerade cards. This is also the reason why we run 2 copies of Swordbreaker. Not only is she an extra target for the main, but she also allows us to dig deeper into our deck if we need to find our Blaster Dark. But this deck has one more use for the main, and that is the backup ride Vanguard Phantom Blaster Dragon. This is a great first ride as it gives our opponent an insane amount of pressure on the first great free turn. Not only do you have a field destruction effect, but it swings for a high number with crits. This is a scary card if your opponent has no perfect guard in hand. Where Danger Lunge as a Vanguard increases the consistency of the deck in terms of functioning, this card increases the lethality of the deck as you put your opponent in a dangerous spot, even before you start swinging with your Blasted Darks and Danger Lunges. This is a great option when you already have your pieces you need and the only thing left to do is kill your opponent. This is a very solid base for a good functioning deck, but there are many more approaches you can take for the Mordred Phantom build. Let's take a look at the list where our main focus is to generate as much force markers as possible. This once again looks very similar, but with the introduction of 2 new cards, it functions differently. First, we have Cursed Lancer, and it's here to take advantage of Mordred's ability to create extra force markers by chaining Cursed Lancers with Transient Revenger Masquerade. We can stack up our force markers really quickly. This list focuses on Mordred Phantom, meaning we don't need a backup ride. Yes, Danger Lunge can function as one, but we want to sit on Mordred Phantom for most of the game, meaning running backup ride targets won't help us for this strategy. That's why we run Buttbar Car, as it helps us to get our pieces. Almost everything we run has synergy with Car's ability. Best case, we get a Blasted Dark, meaning an extra force marker, and we don't mind that it will be retired as we can get it back with Transient Revenger. Nullity Revenger Masquerade is also a great hit, as you can then use its ability to search a Blasted Dark or Mordred Phantom, and then retire himself, meaning you used a Soul Blast to remove a card from your deck and also added a Blasted Dark or Mordred from your hand. Another great hit is Transient Revenger, as you can immediately resolve its skill to shove it in Soul and get a Blasted Dark to the field. The main is also a great hit, as you can deck Finn even more, and in the late game scenarios, hitting Danger Lunge is also great. This card allows you to dig deeper in your deck for a cheap cost. Lastly, we have these 2 cards, and honestly they can be whatever you want. I went with 2 copies of Guru Bao to have some more early aggression, so I can put my opponent to a dangerous damage count or a low hand size as soon as possible. Mordred Phantom's card mechanic and support cards have the same problem as Genslot, as they are very late game. However, your turn 3 can be a lot more eventful if you can stockpile multiple force markers. This deck is a lot more powerful than Genslot, but has also fewer consistency cards than Genslot. So try to work around your weaker early game and consistency issue to create one of the deadliest deck Shadows has ever seen. The illusions become all the more powerful every time the Dark Blade swings, but Mordred Phantom's power is all but a mirage. By channeling the essence of his subjects, he can empower his forces with the life force of the fallen. Try your might with a new Illusionary Revenger Mordred Phantom. And that's the entire spotlight. If you're hungry for more content and you want to see more Vanguard centric videos, why not subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button to be updated for more videos, as we have a lot more in store for the upcoming weeks and days ahead of us. But in the meantime, I want to thank my Patreon supporters for making this video possible and everything that's happening on the channel. If you do want to support us, you can do that directly by going to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a dedicated Patreon as well. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!